Welcome to the second of my Insight series here, and today we are going to be discussing a question that I get all the time. A lot of people ask me, hey, James, in your opinion, can I really get a 170 or higher? We'll talk about it. So in many ways, the can I get X score 170 is the common number that I get asked about, but this applies to any score really. That's the most important question you should have when it comes to your objectives for study. So the short answer to that question is that in my experience, if you are currently plateauing in the mid 150s, probably not. You probably can't hit 170. You can very feasibly reach the mid 160s though. In contrast, if you are currently plateauing in the mid 160s, cracking 170 is much more feasible. Not exactly easy, but it's feasible. And for those of you who are currently in the mid 150s, I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just the short answer is it's probably not going to happen based on my experience. Here's the thing though. I did start this off by saying that that's the biggest question. The can I get X score question is sort of the most important question to ask, but it is unfortunately also the wrong question to ask. I'll elaborate that further, and I'll also tell you what the right question is to ask in another video. So to elaborate a little bit more on the short answers, as I said, if you're currently plateauing in the mid 150s and you're studying on your own, there is a decent chance that you can reach the mid 160s within a couple of months. That's a pretty safe margin. It can be done faster, and of course, for some people, it might take longer. But give or take a couple of months, it can happen. That mid 160 score is within reach. So generally speaking, I think most people in this plateau range, the mid 150s, just need a little bit more technical mastery of the exam. So what I mean by that is that you still need to work on very technical things like how to set up LG diagrams faster, how to use the necessary assumption negation tactic. Very simple things. Well, simple maybe not giving it enough credit. Very specific things, I'll say, that you can just learn, practice, kind of grind out more questions, make it muscle memory, that sort of thing. If you're short on time and ideas on how to improve, it's possible that you can get anywhere from about 5 to 10 hours of tutoring total, and that can be enough to break you into a higher tier. But I do want to emphasize that for people in the 150s looking to move into the 160s, self-study is very feasible if you have enough time. Now for the more touchy question, why do I think you'll hit your ceiling in the mid 160s? It's purely just statistical experience. Relatively few of my students who start in the 150s actually make it into the 170s. It's happened, but just based on my experience and the numbers, it would be irresponsible of me to just cheerleader you and say, oh, anybody can do it. Sure, that may be true. Maybe anybody can. I don't know who can and who can't. But just based on what I've seen, I have to say it is more likely that you won't make it past the 160s. When it comes to beyond just the numbers, though, an observation that I would like to add here is that plateauing in the mid 150s seems to indicate to me that you are facing certain limits on raw processing speed. It's really an almost completely unscientific observation on my part, but I'm just telling you what I've seen. It's just about what I hear from people, how quickly they can think, how quickly they can move from one topic to another in their head without losing track of where they were, that sort of thing. And I'm sure there are people out there who claim to know how to raise processing speed, but I am not one of them. Overall, it seems extremely difficult to do, especially within the time frame that most of you have. I do want to close this part out by saying, feel free to and I say this with no irony, no cynicism, believe in yourself. My diagnostic, as inaccurate of a measure as it might have been, it was in the 130s, and I ended up landing a 180. It took me 2 years and quite a little bit of a unique situation, I would say. But don't let some internet rando like me hold you down. Again, this is all just based on what I've seen and experienced, so I feel it would be irresponsible for me to present anything else other than what I have here. But that doesn't mean that I know everything, and I will never claim to know what your actual limit is without having worked with you extensively. So just because the things that I'm saying don't sound great for the numbers that you're currently seeing, that doesn't mean that you're stuck. Talk to somebody, and we'll get to the importance of talking to somebody at the very end here. So to move on to the people who are currently stuck in the 160s, if you're currently plateauing around 165 to 169, there is a decent chance that you can crack 170 within a couple of months. Again, give or take a little bit of time, but a couple of months seems to be a pretty safe window. I do have to point out that this the move from 165 to 170, even though it's less points on the score scale, it is a much steeper hill to climb. The sort of good news is that most people plateauing here do benefit greatly from just a few fundamental adjustments. The catch is that it's hard to do alone, but it's not impossible to pull off with the right guidance. And again, in my experience, roughly 10 to 20 hours of tutoring, that seems to be the range that does the trick for a lot of people. Like I said, this is a steeper hill to climb. You are looking at, on average, I would say, at least when, again, the only thing I can really judge is people who work with me. The people in this score range pay me twice as much because they have to work with me twice as much as the people looking to land in the 160s, even though they're only moving 5 points as opposed to 10 or 15. So it's a steeper hill to climb, like I've been saying. Which of course begs the question, why is it so hard? We should start with discussing what doesn't help. The typical approach that a lot of us think is going to help is just grinding out more questions, more work, just put in more elbow grease. I mean, feel free to try, but many people in your score range do that and fail to move the needle. And the problem is, usually there's no longer a specific skill or technique that you are missing. So you can drill as the day is long, and it's not because you don't know how to do the technique. There's something else that raw rote memorization and practice won't really get you after a certain point. What you do need to change is buried a little bit deeper. So for instance, you probably need to change the way you read. And you've been socialized to read a certain way all your life, so it's not just a matter of do X technique and win, read this particular way or this set of words and win. That's just not what you need at this point. So we've discussed why, at least in some detail, why it's so hard. But the other question is, so why can't I do it on my own? Why do you request and why do you suggest and why has it been the case that it's taken about twice as long for some of your mid 160 students to move up 5 points on the scale compared to the mid 150 students who are getting 10 to 15 points in half the time? Short answer, I wish I knew. I wish I had a better answer than I do. The only thing I can really say here is if you could do it on your own through self-study, you probably wouldn't be watching this kind of video. And I'm not saying that if you are the kind of person who can do it on your own and you're watching anyway, that I don't appreciate you being here. Of course I do. But yeah, I just really don't have a better answer as to why it's so hard for us to see it from a self-study standpoint, because it's not just a mere self-awareness thing. Most of my students, I would say actually all of them without exception, are very well-adjusted human beings, much better than I am. I'm kind of a degenerate, but yeah, I just don't know why it's so hard to see this kind of thing. Maybe it's the way we've been educated all of our lives. Maybe it's a factor of a number of things. I just haven't been able to exactly figure that out. So that about covers the elaboration that I feel is necessary on the short answers, but I alluded to a longer answer up front. So what is the long answer? The long answer to the can I get a 170 question is that you should actually be asking something else. I suggest asking, what is going to be the cost of getting X score? And cost, I want to be very clear, isn't just a money thing. In fact, money is the least important element of your personal cost. But there is a personal cost that everybody has to reaching any score. So as I also alluded to earlier, I will discuss this cost in greater detail in another installment of the series. And just as a heads up, much of what I say will be kind of intuitive and it'll be stuff that you already know in a sense, but I will add a few specific recommendations in that forthcoming video based on my teaching experience. So what are you going to do next? I would recommend for anybody in any score range, talk to somebody, a tutor specifically, and preferably an independent tutor. Most of us indies do free consultations. I personally do them all the time. And again, I don't want to throw shade on the more corporate or polished or larger outfits. It's just that contacting a corporate outfit always runs the risk of you talking to somebody whose specific job it is to land a sale. Maybe it's just a person who answers the phone, maybe they're not a tutor, or maybe even if they are a tutor, they are put in also one of the other hats that they wear is to answer, consultative inquiries. And that part of their job description very well may be that it's, the rest of the team is depending on them to actually land a sale. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that independent tutors don't have that pressure, but it's different when somebody's specific job is to land a sale. It's always going to poison or sully a little bit just the pure desire to help you. So for those of you who are currently maxing out in the 150s, by talking to somebody, you can find out if the way that someone teaches techniques is going to work for you. Because again, your focus should probably be on getting better at the techniques of this exam. For those of you maxing out in the 160s, you can find out if someone offers what you actually need, which is beyond mere technique. That's something that is difficult to see from somebody's Reddit bio or Twitter bio or whatever website that they may or may not have. Because pre-recorded stuff, as I'm finding out through the process of making this channel, is going to necessarily, just by the nature of pre-recording, it's going to look technique heavy. And so it's hard to tell whether or not somebody is going to offer the non-technical stuff that you need, that digging deeper into your fundamental skills, your fundamental attitudes towards the academic tasks that this exam sets out. That's harder to tell without actually talking to somebody. And that's pretty much all that I have to say on the subject. Thanks for watching. The usual algorithmic stuff, like and subscribe, helps grow the channel, helps us reach more people, helps me of course too, but that's probably the least important aspect of this. But yeah, as I just said on the last slide, I do free consultations all the time, and it doesn't really matter to me where your score is. My job is always going to be, when talking to you in a consultation, is to give you the best advice that I possibly can. I do this primarily because I like helping people. So yeah, so talk to me. I'd be glad to help you no matter what your goal is, no matter where you're starting from. Talking to somebody is the way to start.